It was the announcement no one expected. Just after dawn, Buckingham Palace confirmed what many feared. King Charles III will step back from leading his own coronation. In his place, one woman will take command, Catherine, Princess of Wales. The official statement called it "with the King's blessing." But behind those calm words lay a story of illness, sacrifice, and destiny unfolding in real time. For the first time in living memory, Britain's future queen will lead the ceremony meant for her king. The world is watching, and history is shifting before our eyes. The announcement that stopped Britain. At 6 a.m. London time, Buckingham Palace issued a brief 42-word statement that sent shockwaves across the nation. His Majesty King Charles III, acting on medical advice, will step back from leading the upcoming coronation. The ceremony will proceed under the guidance of Her Royal Highness Catherine, Princess of Wales, with the King's full blessing. The phrasing, especially the line, "with the King's blessing," was both comforting and chilling. Within minutes, BBC News, Sky, and ITV broke regular programming. Britain stood still. Across 10 Downing Street, aides awoke to ringing phones. By 6:15 a.m., the Prime Minister's office requested an urgent briefing. Reporters camped outside palace gates while church bells in Westminster paused their morning chimes, a rare mark of uncertainty. The country hadn't seen such a moment since February 1952, when the death of King George VI was announced. Yet this time, the sovereign was alive, only withdrawing. It wasn't a mourning, it was a handover wrapped in silence. Inside the palace press room, the air felt heavy. Courtiers shuffled printed copies of the release, their faces pale. Someone whispered, "He waited his whole life for this day." The phrase captured the nation's heartbreak. After 74 years of preparation, Charles would not stand at the center of his own coronation. Instead, the future, embodied by William and Catherine, had arrived sooner than anyone imagined. By sunrise, the news dominated every headline. The Times called it "a coronation rewritten." The Guardian asked bluntly, "Is this the end of a reign before its beginning?" And outside Buckingham Palace, by 8 a.m., hundreds gathered, many carrying flowers and handwritten notes reading, "For King Charles and our future queen." Britain had awakened to history being rewritten in real time. While the nation processed the shock, palace corridors told another story, one of illness, exhaustion, and quiet resolve. Behind the polished statement lay weeks of worry about the king's condition. To the public it felt sudden, but for those inside the royal circle, it had been a countdown no one wanted to admit. The truth of why Charles stepped back would soon emerge, and it would reveal how close the monarchy had come to crisis. The health crisis behind palace walls. According to medical advisors, King Charles III suffered a serious but stable episode on September 30, 2025, connected to complications from a previously disclosed 2024 health condition. Insiders describe a night of panic. Emergency calls placed around 11:40 p.m., doctors rushing to Sandringham House within 20 minutes, and Camilla pacing the corridor as monitors beeped in rhythm. By 2 a.m., the king was declared out of danger but under strict observation. For weeks, subtle signs had been visible. At the Commonwealth Summit in Malta, Charles's public address lasted only 6 minutes instead of the planned 15. During a visit to Highgrove on September 18th, photographers noted his pale complexion and trembling hands. Courtiers now admit the palace's optimism was a facade. He wanted to finish the coronation himself, one said, but the body couldn't match the will. Behind closed doors, Senior physicians delivered a stark prognosis. The king's immune system was fatigued. Any intense schedule could trigger relapse within 48 hours. Dr. Julian Evans, the royal physician, reportedly told him, "One more week of this pace could undo a year of recovery." Charles listened in silence. Then he nodded and said softly, "The crown must not limp when it can stride." Those present knew what that meant. The decision had been made. Within 36 hours, documents labeled Operation Continuum were placed before the Privy Council. The choice was formalized. Catherine would lead the coronation on behalf of His Majesty. It was the first recorded instance in over 300 years that a reigning monarch voluntarily deferred the ceremony's leadership. Behind the facade of royal calm lay a man confronting mortality and a dynasty preparing for transition. When the king withdrew to rest at Sandringham, a new center of gravity formed inside Buckingham Palace. The question was no longer if the coronation would proceed, but who would guide it. Amid the uncertainty, one name surfaced repeatedly in every conversation: Catherine. And within 24 hours, she would be asked to shoulder the heaviest duty of her life. Catherine steps into history. At 10 a.m. the next day, an emergency session of the Coronation Planning Committee was convened in Buckingham Palace's Green Drawing Room. Present were Lord Chamberlain Andrew Parker, Archbishop Justin Welby, Princess Anne, and the Prime Minister. The agenda contained one line: designation of interim ceremonial leader. By 10:47 a.m., the decision was unanimous. Catherine, Princess of Wales, would lead with the king's written consent. Her appointment marked a constitutional first. No Princess of Wales had ever assumed ceremonial control of a coronation since the Act of Settlement 1701. Even Queen Elizabeth II, before her reign, had never taken such a role. As one historian noted, this isn't just delegation, it's evolution. Catherine accepted with humility, reportedly saying, "If my duty is to steady the crown, then I will stand." The words spread through staff corridors like a quiet anthem. Her new responsibilities were immense. She would oversee coordination with the Archbishop of Canterbury, approve the Commonwealth representative list, and supervise communications across 56 nations. She also insisted that all logistics honor King Charles's vision, refusing to alter any ceremonial element without his signature. Those close to her said she worked from 7 a.m. to midnight, meeting advisors in shifts, her calm presence grounding everyone. "She didn't just lead," one aide said, "she healed the panic." By October 2nd, rehearsals resumed under Catherine's direction. Clergy, guards, and choristers followed her cues with precision. Palace staff later admitted it felt like a passing of light, Charles's era dimming as hers quietly began. Though she never called it leadership, the nation already saw her that way. In the silence of responsibility, Catherine had stepped into history. As Catherine prepared for the ceremony, another figure stood just behind her: Prince William. Husband, heir, and now protector, he would become the bridge between a recovering father and a rising future queen. Together, they would shoulder the monarchy's most delicate transition in living memory, proving that love and duty could walk the same path. And soon, all eyes would turn to the man behind the woman leading the crown. William's role. As Buckingham Palace adjusted to Catherine's new position, Prince William faced his own delicate balancing act. Between October 3rd and 5th, aides noted his near-constant presence at the king's bedside in Sandringham House, while simultaneously attending daily strategy calls with Lord Chamberlain Andrew Parker. William's dual duty, as son and heir, had become both shield and anchor. "He's living two lives at once," said a royal advisor, "half as the worried son, half as the future king in waiting." By 6 p.m. each evening, William reportedly joined Catherine via secure video conference, reviewing ceremony drafts and diplomatic briefings. The two worked in unison, their synergy honed through years of shared public service and private trials. During Catherine's own health challenges earlier that year, William had learned how to protect her under intense scrutiny. Now those instincts returned, but this time to guard the monarchy itself. Observers described the couple's dynamic as both professional and profoundly human. A palace staffer shared, "When William enters a meeting, Catherine stops speaking mid-sentence, and they finish each other's thought seamlessly. It's extraordinary to watch together. They revised security measures, modified ceremonial timings, and personally approved over 300 guest invitations. Behind closed doors, their teamwork radiated quiet strength, the kind Britain had longed to see again since Elizabeth and Philip." Privately, William kept a journal. One page, later leaked by a close source, reportedly read, "She steadies the crown better than anyone. My duty now is to make sure she's never alone in it." The sentiment reflected not only devotion, but destiny. For the first time, the monarchy's future rested not on one sovereign, but two hearts beating in unison. With William by her side, Catherine's leadership gained momentum. What began as a contingency plan was becoming a masterclass in composure. Yet inside Buckingham Palace, another kind of energy surged, a full-scale operational sprint to meet an impossible deadline. Every department, from protocol to press, was thrown into overdrive. And at the center of it all stood one woman, guiding every decision with precision. The Palace in Overdrive. The day after Catherine's appointment, October 4, 2025, Buckingham Palace resembled a command center. In the East Gallery, staff laid out dozens of blue folders labeled Coronation Coordination. Catherine arrived promptly at 8:30 a.m., greeted by the Archbishop of Canterbury and senior courtiers. Within 15 minutes, she was chairing her first full-scale meeting. She entered quietly but changed the room instantly, one aide recalled. "No panic, just focus." Her approach was structured yet empathetic. She prioritized communication, ensuring the Church of England, Prime Minister's Office, and Commonwealth Secretariat received daily updates. At 10 a.m., she called Prime Minister Rishi Sunak personally, reaffirming the King's gratitude for government support. Her direct involvement broke decades of precedent. Normally, such calls came through private secretaries. Yet Catherine's steady voice calmed political nerves. "It felt like speaking to a head of state," an official later admitted. Every detail mattered to her. She reviewed the guest list line by line, requested updates on choir rehearsals, and personally approved new media guidelines. When the Archbishop proposed a symbolic reading from Queen Elizabeth II's 1953 coronation liturgy, Catherine nodded and said simply, "Let continuity be our comfort." Those 9 words became the unofficial motto of the event. Staff described working 14-hour days, but with renewed purpose, inspired by her discipline. By the end of the week, the chaos had become choreography. BBC producers, military planners, and royal advisors all reported one unifying force behind the scenes: Catherine's calm authority. As one aide summarized, "When others saw a crisis, she saw a responsibility." For the monarchy, this wasn't just survival, it was transformation in motion. Outside palace walls, the British public was still catching its breath. For many, the news that Catherine would lead the coronation felt unprecedented and uncertain. But within days, fear began to soften into admiration. Across the country, from Cardiff to Edinburgh, people gathered around televisions, radios, and smartphones, waiting for reassurance. And when it came, it wasn't from the king. It came from her. The public reaction. The first 24 hours after the announcement saw confusion unlike any other royal event since Diana's funeral in 1997. Social media flooded with speculation. Is the king abdicating? Is Catherine being crowned early? By October 5th, online mentions of #CatherineCoronation exceeded 15 million, prompting BBC to host a special broadcast titled Monarchy in Transition. But as official statements clarified her role, panic gave way to pride. When Buckingham Palace confirmed Catherine was acting on the king's behalf, the tone of the coverage shifted dramatically. Commentators called her the face of stability. Outside the gates, by 5 p.m., hundreds of citizens gathered holding handwritten banners for King and Catherine. A retired teacher interviewed by Sky News summed up the national mood. "We've seen enough drama. Now we want dignity, and that's what she gives us." Public approval followed swiftly. Polling data from YouGov on October 6th showed 88% support for Catherine's temporary leadership, the highest for any royal since Elizabeth II's Silver Jubilee in 1977. Newspapers that once focused on palace gossip now ran glowing tributes. The Guardian called her the modern heart of monarchy. The Telegraph praised her iron calm. Even critics from Republican circles admitted, "She's the first royal in years we can trust." Internationally, messages of solidarity poured in. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese of Australia and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada released joint statements calling her leadership an example of grace in uncertainty. For the first time since the king's diagnosis, Britain and the Commonwealth felt unified. As one royal historian said, "Elizabeth gave us continuity. Catherine gives us compassion. That's the crown's evolution." But inside the palace, not everyone was in the spotlight. As Catherine rose, one familiar presence grew quiet. Queen Camilla, once the visible cornerstone beside Charles, was suddenly absent from view. Officially, she was tending to her husband. But whispers suggested something deeper: unease, reflection, perhaps even retreat. And the question soon spread: where was the Queen Consort as Britain's future queen took her place? The media frenzy and political response. By October 7th, 2025, the story had become global. CNN, BBC World News, and Al Jazeera ran rolling updates every 30 minutes, labeling the situation the most significant royal adjustment since Queen Elizabeth II's illness in 1951. Newspapers from New York to Nairobi published front-page spreads of Catherine stepping into the ceremonial role. Within 48 hours, her photo appeared on the covers of 27 international outlets, each depicting her as the poised guardian of continuity. In Westminster, the reaction was swift and largely supportive. Members of Parliament gathered for an emergency briefing chaired by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak at 9 a.m. A formal statement was released by midday. The government expresses full confidence in the royal household and extends gratitude to the Princess of Wales for her leadership during this temporary adjustment. It was the first time Parliament had formally acknowledged her in a leadership context, a constitutional rarity since Queen Victoria's era. International leaders echoed the sentiment. President Joe Biden sent a personal letter to King Charles praising his dignified decision in favor of national stability. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada and Anthony Albanese of Australia issued joint remarks calling Catherine's composure a reassurance to every Commonwealth citizen. Even the European Union Commission President posted on October 8th, "Britain's strength lies in its grace under pressure. The Princess of Wales embodies that." Still, not everyone was convinced. A few outspoken critics, including Member of Parliament Clive Lewis, demanded greater transparency about the King's medical condition, arguing that withholding details eroded trust. But across the political spectrum, even skeptics conceded that Catherine's calm had neutralized panic. The monarchy, for the moment, was secure, and the world was watching Britain's quiet rebirth unfold in real time. While the global headlines celebrated Catherine's grace, another royal figure quietly faded from view. Queen Camilla, once at the forefront of public duty, had vanished from engagements altogether. Official explanations emphasized her devotion to the king's recovery, but whispers from palace insiders painted a more complex picture, one of fatigue, distance, and reflection. And soon, the Queen's silence would become as newsworthy as Catherine's rise. Camilla's position amid the turmoil. By October 9th, questions about Camilla's absence reached fever pitch. She had not been seen publicly since September 28th, over 10 days before the king's hospitalization. The palace insisted she remained by His Majesty's side, but hospital staff at Sandringham discreetly contradicted that claim. "We haven't seen her since the king's transfer to private care," one source said. The remarks spread like wildfire, igniting rumors of tension inside the monarchy's upper ranks. According to one insider quoted in The Times, Camilla had accepted Catherine's appointment with grace, publicly. Privately, however, she reportedly confided to a close friend, "It's as if I've been erased overnight." The words resonated with royal historians who remembered earlier rivalries within the palace. Still, Camilla's advisors maintained that her withdrawal was purely personal, insisting she needed time to refocus after months of unrelenting pressure. Palace courtiers worked carefully to maintain the image of unity. A joint statement released at 3 p.m. on October 10th read, "Her Majesty, Queen Camilla continues to support the Princess of Wales and the Prince of Wales as they prepare for the King's coronation ceremony. The family stands united in purpose, yet the absence of photographs or public appearances only deepened speculation. In an age of instant media, silence spoke louder than words." Still, the British public remained largely sympathetic. Polls from YouGov showed 62% believing Camilla deserved privacy and respect during the king's health crisis. However, a growing 30% minority expressed the view that Catherine now represented the monarchy's true forward face. For the first time since Queen Elizabeth's reign, the throne's emotional center of gravity had shifted decisively, and the change appeared irreversible. As the debate over Camilla's absence swelled, attention turned back to the ceremony itself. The coronation, still set for Westminster Abbey, had transformed into something entirely new. Less about crowns and scepters and more about reassurance and continuity. And at the heart of this reimagined vision stood Catherine, who now bore not only the weight of history, but the hopes of a nation. The ceremony. Catherine will lead. Plans for the Westminster Abbey coronation began taking shape under Catherine's direction on October 10, 2025. The theme, Continuity Through Compassion, was her personal contribution, approved by both the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Prime Minister. Preparations included symbolic gestures, floral arrangements using Queen Elizabeth's favorite lilies, the integration of youth choirs from all 4 nations of the United Kingdom, and a blessing in 14 Commonwealth languages. The most striking detail came from within the ceremonial program. Catherine would carry the Queen Consort's scepter with cross during the opening procession, a direct symbol of King Charles's trust. The scepter, typically reserved for reigning queens, had not left the royal treasury since Elizabeth II's coronation in 1953. The sight of Catherine bearing it would mark a first in British history, a living heir leading in the presence of her reigning father-in-law. Inside Westminster Abbey, seating arrangements told their own story. Prince William would stand beside Catherine during the vow of renewal, while the Archbishop would publicly acknowledge her stewardship of duty. Among foreign guests, over 2,000 dignitaries confirmed attendance, including representatives from Canada, Australia, India, and Japan. For historians, the event signaled the monarchy's transformation, less an institution of hierarchy, more a partnership of service. By October, rehearsals were complete. Palace officials confirmed that King Charles would deliver a brief televised message from Sandringham, blessing the ceremony. But all eyes, all cameras, and all hearts would be fixed on one figure walking down the Abbey aisle. As BBC anchor Hugh Edwards summarized it, "The crown will rest upon Charles's head, but Catherine will carry its meaning." As the coronation approached, Britain felt something it hadn't in years: calm certainty. The crisis that once threatened to fracture the monarchy had instead clarified its direction. Catherine's leadership had not replaced the king, it had reaffirmed him through grace. And when dawn rose over London on the morning of the ceremony, it signaled not just the continuation of a tradition, but the quiet birth of a new royal era. The dawn of a new era. Historians will likely mark October 2025 as the day the House of Windsor began its renewal. King Charles III remained the sovereign in title, yet the presence of William and Catherine now defined the monarchy's future tone. Collaborative, compassionate, modern. As Catherine took her place at Westminster Abbey's high altar, there was no mistaking the symbolism. She was not the crowned queen, but the guiding hand behind the throne. The king's recorded message aired mid-ceremony. His words, broadcast at 12:10 p.m., moved the audience to silence. "In faith and love, I entrust this generation with the same crown I once inherited. May their strength be the light that steadies our kingdom." The camera panned to Catherine, who bowed her head briefly, a moment of humility that captured hearts around the world. Outside, thousands gathered across the mall, waving flags and singing hymns. In Hyde Park, crowds watched live screens under Union Jack canopies. The BBC later reported an estimated 28 million domestic viewers, one of the highest broadcast audiences in British history. Across social media, the phrase "Queen in all but name" trended for 3 consecutive days, reflecting the public's emotional embrace. By nightfall, as the Westminster bells rang, the monarchy had changed, quietly, profoundly, and irreversibly. For King Charles, it was the fulfillment of a father's faith. For William, it was the validation of partnership. And for Catherine, it was the moment she became not just Britain's future queen, but its living symbol of endurance. A new chapter had begun, not with a crown, but with courage. As the palace lights dimmed and preparations continued, one truth became undeniable: the monarchy has changed forever. King Charles's retreat wasn't a sign of weakness, it was an act of trust. In stepping back, he allowed the world to see what he always believed, that the crown's future rests safely in William and Catherine's hands. Her leadership has turned crisis into renewal, silence into strength. The coronation may no longer be his moment, but it has become their legacy. And in that passing of duty, Britain found something rare: a monarchy reborn through grace, not power.